I'm ex I am excited to hear about all the work of our panelists today, and I'm pleased to introduce our moderator. So Brian Jaffe is AASA's Director of Children's Programs, where he leads their federally and philanthropically funded efforts focused on student success. Brian some leaders on efforts centered on equity and underrepresented populations, access, opportunity, and success. Brian is in Charleston and also just an incredible partner with us. So Brian, thanks again for accepting this invitation to moderate today's webinar, and I'll turn it to you.
Well, thank you, Helen and Daniel and the great team at National PTA who've been such leaders in this work. And I also want to thank IEL, Kwesi, and Liz for the great work that they do in family engagement and community schools as well. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you find yourself in this great country of ours today. I am really glad and proud to be here on behalf of AASA, the School Superintendents Association, representing about 10,000 school leader members across the country in communities large and small, all over this great land of ours. We have four great leaders that I'm excited to introduce and really turn over the microphone to them to speak, because that's who you want to hear from more than me in just a moment. But I also wanted to say that ASA recently announced our new campaign called Public Education Promise, which is seeking to sort of recapture patriotism around education and recenter public education as a public good that should be supported sort of across the aisle. And in doing that work, we've been talking to members and school leaders and other kinds of partners like PTA and others across the country for the last 6 or 9 months. And we came up with 5 sort of core principles that ASA is going to center our public education promise around. One of those is prioritizing student-centered learning. One is ensuring students get real skills for real life. Another is attracting and retaining top employees. The last one is measuring what matters. And the fourth one, which we'll highlight today, is really about building engaged families and community partnerships. So in coming up with this huge campaign for public education, which is a pretty big idea, as these superintendents will tell you here in a minute, their job is wide-ranging in the things they need to achieve in terms of building design and curriculum and transportation and board relations and all these things. One of those 5 things is about engaging families, because we cannot do this work without engaged families and communities supporting their students as well as our schools and teachers. So I'm excited to introduce Superintendent Sean Bolson, who leads the Harford County Public Schools in Maryland. He was the 2024 Maryland Superintendent of the Year. And just at our recent national conference a couple of weeks ago, was named a Family Engagement Changemaker and won that award for Harford County's innovative work in family engagement and for being a great leader. Superintendent Elena Zachary-Ross leads the Ypsilanti Community Schools in Ypsilanti, Michigan. She's a native Detroiter and has 20 years of leadership and a coaching experience and a passion for seeing organizations and teams transformed by leadership development. We have Superintendent Alexandra Estrella, who has spent the last 5 years in the role of Superintendent of Norwalk Public Schools in Connecticut. She is a first-generation Latina American, a visionary, innovative, forward-thinking leader who does not accept the status quo regarding scholar development and learning opportunities. And we're proud to have Superintendent Norm Stewart, who leads the Marsing Joint School District in Idaho and has since 2013. Under his leadership, Marsing is focused on breaking down barriers to student success through a strong community schools model, which our partners at IEL know so much about. Norm is a vocal advocate for rural education, ensuring that students in small communities have equitable access to opportunities. So I want to thank them all for making time today to share their expertise and experience with all of you on this webinar. And what I want to start by doing is giving them each a chance to say a little bit about their district, and also to ask each of them to talk about the purpose of district-wide family engagement efforts in their district and to highlight one hallmark family engagement initiative in their district. So I want to give each of them an opportunity to introduce their district and the family engagement work that they lead, and we'll start with Superintendent Stewart.
Well, thanks, Brian. Again, my name is Norm Stewart. I'm the superintendent for the Marsden School District. I've been in the district for 13 years, 12 of which as superintendent. A little bit about Marsden, so that you understand our district. We are in Idaho. We're about 40 miles away from Boise. We are definitely an agriculturally based community of about 1,300 people. There's a number of dairies and farms and ranches, so very agriculturally based. In our community, there's been very limited resources that we've had, and so that's what basically drove us to want to pursue a community schools model. And of course, family community engagement is one of those four pillars that really are the foundation of community schools. We remodeled an old middle school, converted that into our community school resource center called the Hub. And within that facility, we're trying to provide resources to our community and to our students that will help reduce those barriers to help our students be successful. We have a school-based health center with a nurse practitioner, as well as on-site counselors from an outside counseling agency. We have 3 classrooms of early childhood ed, from Head Start for low-income families to our own Husky Pup preschool and a developmental preschool. We have an adult and after-hours classroom in which we provide after-hours learning opportunities, just like from November to April, adult ESL classes for families that want to pursue their English acquisition. We offer daycare at the same time. We also offer the only community food and clothing pantry within the Marston community itself. And so we're trying to establish those resources for our community. And our initiative, as far as for the family and community engagement, the highlight of what we've been focusing on is really looking at student wellness overall. It started off as a nursing project and then expanded out to the Marston Project, which is an Iceland upstream prevention foundation. And so we've started surveying all middle and high school students back in 2022. We learned at that point that 66% of our middle and high school students were suffering from moderate to severe depression. And this is using the official PHQ-9. And so we've really launched into some family engagement to try to enlist our families. We went over that data with the community, went over it with staff and students, all in separate meetings, come together, and then we've established this is a foundation to really pursue overall student wellness and really address student connections with family, with peers, and then with trusted adults at school. And so through this work, we've been able to reduce that depression rate. To our most recent survey is down to 24%. That was given in October. So through family engagement is how we've been able to improve those numbers. So thanks, Brian.
I'd love to hear a little bit about Norwalk, Connecticut, and the great work that you're doing, Superintendent Estrella.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Norwalk Public Schools has immersed itself in a big shift in terms of its demographics. It was at one point very different, and now we are 70% Black and Brown students. As a result of that, we the organization to ensure that we are meeting the needs of all families across the district. Upon my arrival to Norwalk Public Schools, they were sunsetting their strategic plan, which gave us the opportunity to build a new strategic plan that encompassed the voices of our community. So we engaged in a year-long conversation with the community to learn about what their priorities and needs were. We indulged into an equity study with Temple University that allowed us to deepen our understanding around the different communities within the district, particularly those that were marginalized for a significant amount of time, learn from them and build a plan that met their diverse learning needs. In particular, making sure that as we design a plan, our plan of action, we thought about who we wanted our graduates to be. And through the design of our portrait of a graduate, we've really encompassed what the community wants, but most importantly, what students need for an undetermined future ahead. And we're really excited about the work that we're doing to ensure that students have what they need, but most importantly, our families, bringing them along the way. And I'll speak more to that later on through different initiatives and systematic changes that will enable them to be active participants in their child's learning experience.
Thank you so much. Superintendent Zachary Ross, would you tell us a little bit how it looks in Ypsilanti?
Definitely. Thank you again for having me here today. I'm Alina Zachary Ross, Superintendent of Ypsilanti Community Schools. I've been a superintendent in Michigan for 13 years, and I've been proudly serving this community for the past 7 years. Ypsilanti Community Schools is located in Ypsilanti, Michigan, where Eastern Michigan University lies. We're about 35 minutes from Detroit. We say we're suburban with urban characteristics. We have a huge diverse population that we're so proud to serve, with 56% African Americans, 24% white, 9% who identify as Hispanic Latina, 9%, two or more races, and 3% Asian. So we have a wonderful melting pot here. And our family engagement efforts are driven by our belief that we are stronger together. You'll see that everywhere around our school community. We are also a community school, so we see our parents as our scholars' first teachers, and they are vital partners to us. Our goal is to just build equitable collaborations where we honor each family's unique history. We know they have funds of knowledge, and we want to bring that into our schools. We don't work to, for, or not with our families. We work with them, and we value that knowledge that they have. One key initiative that we are really proud of is something that we call Boots on the Ground. We work and partner with other agencies. We have over 200 partnerships in this district, and we work with them to find out where our parents are. Oftentimes, schools think that parents have to just come to us, but we go to them. We go to parks, community centers, churches, and we go there. We bring treats like ice cream and popcorn, and we listen to the family's concerns, as well as then share out district information about what we can offer, what partnerships that we have that really support our families. And then that's when we celebrate each one of our families, where they are in their locations, valuing each part of our community, while we also build relationships in that comfortable setting where when they come into the schools, they feel that sense of belonging and they know that we're stronger together. This, along with things like our back to school bashes and parent cafes, it just shows our commitment to investing in our families and empowering them as true partners in our scholars' education.
That's wonderful. I saw some of the celebratory reactions going up as you talked about celebrating your families and meeting them where they are. So that's lovely to see. And in Maryland, Superintendent Bolson, tell us how things work where you are.
All right. Thank you for having me here today. So I'm in Harford County, Maryland, which is northeastern Maryland. We're a little bit north of Baltimore. We serve just under 38,000 students in 55 schools. We're a larger district. We're not as diverse as some of the others. We're about 35% non-white here. We really are a suburban district, but we have a full mix of urban and rural as well within our district. When families are engaged, we know our students perform better, they feel more connected to school, and they're just so much more likely to stay engaged in their education. And so, our Board of Education strategic plan essentially prioritizes family engagement. It's the second of 4 goals in their strategic plan. It's an additional priority they've asked of me over the last 2 years connected to my evaluation. And we just do so much to focus on this. We have a lot of great resources. One of the ones that I would actually like to highlight is the fact we have what we call parent and community engagement liaisons in each of our 55 schools. We've given them the acronym PACE. So our PACE liaisons for each school are the ones who help make sure our schools are doing the work connected to the national PTA standards. Pretty much everything we design for family engagement is around those standards. That's the starting point for us. It has been since they came out years ago. And so I guess one of the most fun things the group does is it's our Family Friendly Schools Award that we put out there, and that keeps people connected to the work. Our liaisons do what they can to highlight all the work that the school's doing to ensure we keep those very strong family relationships. But our award is really driven by community input. We get nominations from people in the community, then we ask schools to vote for the top 3 school finalists. And then, we use the standards as our kind of indicators for what success looks like. And so we do a vote. We're now doing it quarterly. We go out and, we give the award, we have the banner, but we're able to celebrate each school for the work they do around family engagement. And I guess if I were to point anyone, I know we provided a list of resources to go along with this website. to go along with this webinar, our website just has such a great list under sort of parents and resources for parents. We have so many cool things, but highlighting those PACE liaisons, because so much of the work starts with them. As again, they're our boots on the ground, making sure we're connecting to every parent.
Excellent. Thank you each for responding to that. I want to take us into a little bit, as I started at the beginning, talking about the role of the superintendent really encompasses a lot of different things, what we sometimes call the B's and C's of education. So you've got your board, and the bond measures, and the buildings, and the bell schedules, and the books, and all of those parts. And then on the C side, you've got, the curriculum and the children and the caring and the community and the cap and gown that you're trying to get everybody towards. And superintendents have to balance both of those hats. And so I wanted to ask each of you a different question that sort of goes across some of those different pieces of the work. So Superintendent Zachary Ross, one of the major roles of a superintendent is to help oversee and plan the budget. So can you talk to us about how you allocate your budget with an eye towards family engagement initiatives and using that lens to support the work that the budget goes towards?
Absolutely. Thanks, Bryant. One of the things that we've been doing is that same work that I was hearing some of my colleagues. We've been doing strategic planning work, hearing from our parents, our stakeholders, our administrators, and then it goes to our board, who we work collaboratively with to develop our budget. And for us in Ypsilanti Community Schools, it's crucial to understand that all of our financial allocations are deeply tied to our commitment to being the community schools, that we are community-centered, and we believe in this authentic engagement. So we really set aside time to find ways to do this in an authentic way, not just surveying, but really ways that we can honor the rich histories and perceptions of our community that is informing everything that we do. So when you think about budget, we really take an opportunity to say, what does this budget reflect our values? And so you've got to pay for the things that they always say, you look at a person's calendar and checkbook, and our budget does reflect our values. And we recognize the critical importance, and I heard it today, of mental health. That's why we invest in every single building, having a 31A social worker for all of our students, and then a special services social worker, and that those people are there to ensure that our students have what they need, the support that they need to thrive. They're the ones who are communicating with the families, making sure that they have that engagement with other stakeholders. We also have parent and community liaisons. Those people go and knock on the doors. They find out if they're not in school, what is it? What's the barrier? How do we remove it? We also fund individual building programs like Pretty Brown Girls that focuses on that social emotional learning. For young girls of color, cultivating their self-esteem and their confidence in their leadership. We do this because we understand the power of mentorship. We're really close, 5 blocks from Eastern Michigan University. And so they have a program called Making Youth Matter. They're social work interns, social work students, but we give funding for release time for those professors to come here to look at, to evaluate, because we can't just do things without looking at the return on investment. So they evaluate what we're doing in our district, but then they also bring those internships in. And those interns can conduct home visits and connect with families and give them community resources beyond what our school social workers are able to do. We also fund something called Concentric, and that's where they go out and they work with our buildings and they go to home visits. Last year, we conducted 600 visits with a significant focus on parent engagement. What is it that you like about the school? What is it that are the barriers that we need to put in place to support you? Those visits help us understand and address really what are the root barriers to attendance and participation. And then lastly, you heard me talking about working with our families and not to them, for them, and not without them at all. And because that is a part of what we have, you have PACE over there, my colleagues. We have something we call FACE, a FACE conference, the Family and Community Empowerment Conference. That's part of what we do with that back to school bash. And we listen to our families and have them tell us who do you want to speak at this session? So it's an unconference. They come in, they can go to sessions, they learn about resources that will wrap around their child with the child focus in the middle. And we are intentionally shifting our thinking from what's the traditional models of what we do with parents by doing it to them, but we want to do with. So because of that, we know that oftentimes those best practices, they disregard race, they disregard class, they disregard language. And so because of that, we want to make sure our families have a seat at the table.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Superintendent. Another important role the superintendent plays is getting the right people in the right seats on the bus, particularly when it comes to the central office. So, Superintendent Estrella, how do you structure your central office in a way that it supports family engagement in Norwalk?
So we've done a lot of work. So as a superintendent of Norwalk Public Schools, I focused on restructuring and basically reimagining how we operated in central office through our strategic plan redesign. One of the first things we did in restructuring central office was making sure that the primary function was directly focused on building our schools and helping them realign their focus in making parents inclusive and learning who the people in front of them were. So we realigned resources, how decision making and the flow of decision making was happening with principals, teachers in support of students and families. We also shifted how communication to engage families was structured to ensure that parent voice was always at the center of the work that we did. So we modernized our communication platforms by introducing systems like Parent Square, a tool that streamlined our school to home communication, alongside providing superintendent updates and messages, regular department conversations that happen through our committee meetings, where the different departments provided updates on what was happening, and parents have an opportunity to speak on those topics at hand. We have structured workshops with the board where we educate families about the different initiatives and priorities that have been set across the district. And we've did an overhaul of our website to make it more parent friendly and that the information well aligned to the needs of our families. And most importantly, that language barriers were not getting in the way in the way which our families were receiving information. So we strategically put those efforts in place to do this. We also established a dedicated budget process link and research section to make our financial structures and conversations transparent and making sure that all of our parents were involved and well aware of how we were prioritizing funding across the organization. Thirdly, one of the things, ironically, that was not in place was translation services. Although most of our families speak Spanish and Haitian Creole, board meetings were always only in English. So we infused translation services in our board meetings as well as many of our school-based meetings so that when parents came to the table, they felt that they had a voice at the table and that they understood the information being provided so that they could be active participants in the process. Another component across the district, besides our PTAs, is build school-based governance teams that consist of parents, teachers, school personnel, our school leaders, and they play an active voice in our school budgeting process because unlike many districts, our schools have a school-based budgeting structure that allows our families to be actively involved in what they think is important and what should be prioritized for the needs of their schools, particularly because we have a lot of theme-based schools. And in that process, there is a lot of personalization that happens that we want our families to be part of. Twice a year, we have a joint school governance meeting with our board alongside all of the school governance teams across the district that provide an opportunity for us to educate our families around curricula, initiatives, as well as the budgeting process, which is always a big topic of conversation. But it also gives us an opportunity to acquire feedback from them of things that we are doing well and things that we could potentially do better. We also have established town halls to learn from them, surveys, as well as small group conversations that allow us to learn about their individual needs and priorities. I think lastly, and perhaps the most impactful shift we've built across Norwalk Public Schools is the Family Center. We actually obtain property and build a center that is a one-stop shop that allows families to register in one location and obtain resources in one location, from MLL services, registration services, even connecting them with city services across the organization through this center has been instrumental. We just had a clinic established at the center that not only provides physicals for students coming into our system, but also provide family care for their parents as well and other family members. And I think that that has been one of our biggest accomplishments, particularly because it provides a well-rounded approach in providing services that further extend beyond what we are doing at the school and connect them to city agencies and partners for them to obtain additional services. And we've also established elementary, middle, and high school choice fairs because we've modernized programs across our system, providing IB, marine science, biology, and an array of different pathways. In doing so, we want parents to be aware of the choices they're making as they are selecting schools, but also having a systematic process by which they enter lottery and the application process. So we have also centralized those services. And these initiatives just reflect our unwavering commitment to ensuring that Norwalk Public Schools is not only a place where our students can succeed, but where families are valued partners, fully supported at every step of their children's educational experience.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Superintendent Balson, another role of the superintendent is taking a hard look at data and making some difficult decisions. So how does Harford County look at data to drive your decision-making processes when it comes to family engagement? So what reporting do you get? What kind of data are you looking at? And how does data-driven decision-making support family engagement efforts?
So you're right, data is absolutely essential. But part of that is data transparency. So I'll mention a few different things we do for gathering data. But one thing we've gotten in place in the last couple of years is we actually have a live data dashboard that's updated every week, and is done by our board standards. And so we're looking for things that might change over time. So, for example, our data dashboard under the parenting, the family engagement standard, is around, have we had customer service calls? Have we had public comment? Have we had even MPIA requests? So these are things we update regularly to show, the type of interactions we're getting. And that's something that's available on our website. Another way to look at the data is what type of attendance are we getting at our Learn With Me events? The Learn With Me events are something, we've incorporated in all of our schools. We wanted to focus particularly around literacy and math. And these are events where parents are coming into the classroom during a day, and they're having the opportunity to experience the instruction with the teachers and the students, and they're kind of learning about, the elements of effective instruction while they're seeing their students work. And it's been a really great activity, but, we want to see that we have engagement there. Our PACE liaisons are, I've mentioned them before. They're a group that, they're able to look at some of the key performance indicators, chronic attendance, behavioral concerns, academic performance. They can sort of stay connected to that. And so that's just one of the many ways we keep track of those things. But also, the big picture data, the thing that I think in many ways really steers the bigger picture practices we do around family engagement. We do a parent engagement survey. And last year we had about 1,500 responses to that. And those, then we take that survey information, but instead of just, taking it back and talking about it, we produce a report for it. So again, we have a program evaluation page where we provide all the studies that we've done. And so we took the results from the parent engagement survey and turned that into about a 15-page report of our findings. And so that gives us something to work from if we're going to maybe change the practices we have. We also conducted a wellness needs assessment. I heard one of my other colleagues talk about doing that district-wide, and that's been absolutely essential. And because, so much has happened with just student mental health and the needs there. And so our wellness needs assessment, we had about 21,000 responses to that. And that gives us just amazing, amazing data. In addition to having a report written that describes the work we do, that sort of described our findings from that, we also built a dashboard for our educators to be able to access so they can find information, about the students, and we can be able to meet the students where they are based on some of what we get. So, we have some things that only counselors can access because it's the private information. And then we have other parts that administrators can see the bigger picture data and look for trends and things like that. So it's just another way we're looking at the overall needs of our students and how we might engage the families in that. And the last thing I would mention is one of our main we started a lot of this work with our customer service task force, and that task force has been meeting consistently for the 6.5 years I've been here. And in fact, at every weekly senior staff meeting, we do just a short report out. Okay, what are the customer service comments that have come in the last week? How are our ratings? Where did we, where were improvements suggested? Those sorts of things. And that same report goes out to my board every Friday. So keeping track of the customer service, posting data, but also making sure that when we ask people for information, we're using it and we're closing that loop is always so essential.
I absolutely agree. I think when you ask for that information, you're duty bound to not just acknowledge it, but to have people see the fruits of that feedback that they've given. All right, Superintendent Stewart, I fear we're starting to make this job sound like it's hard, but after you've collected the data, you've built a budget based on those decision making, you've organized your central office to do this work, you still have to go out and get buy-in from the board, from your teachers and building leaders and all that. So getting buy-in is a real responsibility on the shoulders of superintendents to assure that district-wide initiatives are well received. How do you keep your school board bought in to your work around family engagement, especially as we face these uncertain times and periods of adjustment, new board members, those kind of things? How does that part work? Again, this sounds really easy, the work you guys do.
I was going to say, Brian, yeah, it makes it sound really easy. And as far as I'm very fortunate. It's been great to hear from the other superintendents, and each of our districts are so unique, and especially with different sizes, and ours being so small. I've been very fortunate that I have a very supportive board. When I took over, I was the fourth superintendent in 5 years. So we had a lot of turnover, and to be able to have that consistency, and to have an opportunity to build a relationship with our school board. So that has been a positive attribute that we've been able to put together, and having that relationship allows for, because relationships are built on trust, is having them trust me enough to try some things that were maybe out of the ordinary, add something that they weren't used to doing. That was when we brought in community schools. And as we've continued to expand through our family and community engagement activities, really trying to make sure that we're maintaining that communication, letting them know what is going on. That was mentioned as far as I give my board a weekly update on things. I do an audio recording for them, and just keeping them well informed of the different activities that are going on, what we've seen, what responses we've had back, but then also to make sure that they are invited to participate in the things that we're doing. If we're looking at our community school, because we've remodeled our middle school, and we have a site. We've had a number of different groups come in for tours of our facility to look at what we've been able to put together in this rural setting. And we've had anywhere from legislators to other school districts and businesses and corporations want to come in to see what we're doing. And we're making sure that we're inviting our board to be involved in that, to participate so they can hear what's being said. They can also talk to those groups. But then in turn, because they are the representatives within their zones, within their areas of the community, making sure that they have that information so that they can share out and invite our families to be able to come in and participate in those activities that we're trying to promote, especially around our marching project, the wellness and making sure that they are well equipped with the information so that they can help those families understand the importance of them coming in. We also have them basically trying to provide them with the data so that they understand the things that are going on. Anything from a return on investment, even going back to when we first started the hub, wondering what it cost the district in order to have the hub. And we operate on grants and donations and volunteers hours. And so what we didn't have was maybe the custodial services. And so what we estimated that was about $10,000 to $15,000. But in the time that we started this in November of 2019 to today, we're well over $5 million of services and grants and things that we've been able to bring into this community for our students and for the families and get them actively involved. So make sure that the board understands the return on investment so they can share that with the families. Also, the number of people that are being served so they can understand, just like our pantry, for a community of 1,300 people, the last 3 years, we've served over 14,000 individuals each of the last 3 years. Making sure they understand that, making sure they understand the student academic achievement scores, how we're tracking our kids who are in our early childhood ed, and as we're comparing them to students who didn't choose to go into the early childhood ed, tracking their achievement and showing what relevance and how important it is to have those preschool options. But then also to make sure that they are included within the promotion. So as we are advertising different events and that our boards are there to also help promote, even when we're going and we've been asked to present at conferences, we have our board members also participating in some of those presentations at our School Boards Association during the fall conference. They're one of the presenters that can come in, and I am thoroughly convinced that we provide enough information to our board that they see the benefits of this, that any of our board members could actually go and present on the positive things that we're doing in order to engage the families, provide the services that will reduce barriers, and just helping them understand. So it's about providing them with the information that they can take, and then that will help their understanding and promote that buy-in for the services that we have.
Outstanding. I'd like to encourage our attendees to continue to use the Q&A option to get some questions, as we'll be moving into audience Q&A in just a few moments. But first, in that Q&A, I saw we had a superintendent to superintendent question, or at least looks like it was from one of ours. So Sean, there was a question about the data dashboard before I move into final comments from each. So is that pulled from internal systems, or were there investments the districts had to make in order to make a data dashboard sustainable and work?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I was just thinking about typing an answer to that. So that we did all internally. So it's built with Power BI, and our person who does our program evaluation put the dashboard together, so that was really part of his work just to design that. But we sort of polled our leadership about, what's something that's dynamic that would most likely change every week, because we get lots of data, but some of it's once a year. We didn't want to post it there. We wanted, under our 4 different standards, we have about 6 or 8 things for each of those. So we identify, who that data is getting to, and we ask them to update it once a week. You can see, so you can go in and click by week. So it's all done internally. It's not all automated, unfortunately. Someday we'll get there. So we do have someone in each of these different departments who just goes in and plugs the numbers in. But it's a pretty straightforward process. It wasn't a big ask. There wasn't a ton of cost involved. It was just designing something that we felt we could maintain on a weekly basis.
Hey, I'm going to stay right there with you, Sean, as we get into a closing comment from each of you, and we'll work backwards from our first question order. So Superintendent Bolson, is there something you would share with our audience today about one way that leaders on this call might represent community organizations, parent groups, PTA folks, one way that they can strengthen partnerships with district administrators to help enhance this district-wide family engagement relationship?
Okay, I thought we might have been going a different direction there. The one thing I think about with this work is look at where our goals overlap. I mean, all of these entities have deliverables that they're trying to achieve on behalf of students. obviously school systems do on so many different fronts. But when I'm looking at district partners, I'm not just looking at what can they do for us. It's like, what can we do for each other to make sure that we're delivering on our collective goals? And so whether you're working in law enforcement, I mean, they have responsibility to maintain safety. How can we help contribute to that? And what can they do for us to make their jobs and our jobs easier? So it's really looking for those common missions. Because we share them with so many entities. I mean, we've had fantastic relationships and incredible support from our health department on so many fronts because we've been able to figure out, where their mission is aligned with us. And so as a leader, my job is just to help, reduce the resistance. We know when our people get busy, sometimes they don't have the time or they get uncomfortable sharing. And so I just need to facilitate that, try to identify someone in the office whose job is going to be made easier by that partnership. And we know partnerships take work, but if it's helping us deliver on our mission. So for me, it's just looking for that common mission. We all have them. Identify it, leadership, reduce the resistance, and then I think you can really build some really dynamic things.
Excellent. Superintendent Zachary Ross, a piece of advice or closing thought you might have for our audience here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was saying some of the same things. We talk about mission and vision alignment, and part of that is really listening to what we do have as those pillars in our strategic plan, finding out what's missing. I mean, there's always gaps. And so we're saturated around certain things like perhaps tutoring, but there's a big need in others. So how can they fill those needs? And they need to really be clear around their mission. What is my mission? What is my capacity and what grade level? So when we do have those opportunities to have conversation, it can be really focused on what is it that you offer and what is it that what need is being met. That we have in our district. Oftentimes there's this big, huge array. We can do everything. No, we all cannot do everything. We've got to focus in what grade levels, what can you offer to those parents? What gap does it fill for the need for my families? And we're happy then to connect you to those right persons within our organization who can really give access to our families, to our scholars, and to our educators.
Fantastic. Superintendent Estrella, a thought for how to best partner with our districts as we try to make this family engagement work.
So I think in alignment to what my colleagues have saying, thinking of not coming into an organization expecting to your mission and vision and work, but really sitting down and having conversations around what is the collective need and how can we strategically together engage in collective impact. What is our common North Star? And how can we then align services? Because as stated before, we can do it all. And we know that in order for us to effectively serve families, we have to engage with other agencies so that the work extends beyond the school day. So one, alignment in terms of goals, priorities, but most importantly, what is that common North Star that we can all work towards to effectively support our families and students, which are our why in the work.
And Superintendent Stewart, before we get to a closing thought from a colleague and friend of ours, and then maybe a couple audience Q&A if we have time, what's your last word and piece of advice for our audience today?
I think, all of the superintendents have had great suggestions and ideas. But this all boils down to communication and being able to communicate back and forth, sitting down, having those conversations. If other groups wanted to come in to try to get buy-in from administration, it's important that we're communicating so that both sides understand what options are available out there. What is the school districts already focused on as far as priorities and what additional things could be brought in. And then really it comes down to it's important to have administrative buy-in. And we've seen that through trying to expand community schools throughout the state of Idaho. It's important to have the administrators buying in because they know that there's a demand on resources. whether that's staffing, whether that's financial, and whether it's, you're operating on grants and you've got to require somebody to write a grant. But the key is getting buy-in and working together and being able to communicate. And so having those connections and just trying to make sure that everyone's working together, and then encouraging those administrators that there are school districts that are doing some amazing work, just like the other 3 school districts that are on here. Being able to show that here are some examples of other wonderful things that are going on, and is this something that we could also do within our school district to expand?
Wonderful. I want to thank all 4 of you for sharing so much today that is useful. And I know it's just the tip of the iceberg of the work in your district. There's some resources that our panelists shared, and they're going to be located in a folder that Daniel's going to put in the chat now and send to attendees in a follow-up email. But I'd like to invite a longtime colleague and friend, Kwesi Rollins, to provide us with a brief reflection on this panelist conversation. So Kwesi is a member of IEL's senior leadership team, and he guides the Institute for Educational Leadership's portfolio of programs designed to develop and support leaders with a particular emphasis on family and community engagement, early childhood education, and community-based leadership development. So Kwesi, I'd love to invite you on for a few comments.
Thanks so much, and it's really an honor to have just listened to all of these powerful superintendents. What I found interesting, despite the obvious differences in size of the district, context, demographic, each of you reflected themes that are really an engagement mindset. So you talked about a number of things that you bring to the table and that you have operationalized in your district. Respect for families, respect for their funds of knowledge, willingness to work with families and not for, going to them instead of always having them coming to you, celebrating families and building relationships in comfortable settings, home visits, a strategy that's near and dear to my heart. Lots and lots and lots of creativity and partnerships. And really, and a lot of folks always wonder about, how do we know if what we're doing makes sense? And your Family Friendly Schools Award was an incentive that engaged staff in the community, and you use the PTA standards as a guide for what success looks like. And so that work has been done for you. You don't have to go out and figure out what success looks like. You already have a tool to do that. And so that's a wonderful idea. I was really struck by the budget question. Martin Luther King is credited with having said budgets are moral documents. And so what you demonstrated was that your budget reflects what you care about and what you're willing to invest in. And so if you stop 9 out of 10 superintendents on the street, they all will tell you they think family engagement is a good idea. But if you look at their budgets, if you look at their structures, if you look at some other ways in which they're organized, that doesn't really reflect that espoused value. And so what we heard here today is, they've put their money where their mouth is. They've restructured their district offices to reflect this. They've taken on new communication tools and translation. In one case in Norwalk, you've got parents on a school-based governance team, which gives them access and input on budget priorities. So just a lot of good work, really, really proud of all of you and delighted to be part of this. And the last thing I'll say, which is an important strategy, I think it's lost, talked about board engagement. And when your board is on board with this and understands the return on the investment, then they will support and sustain this work, even in hard times. And so you've got to, and not every superintendent always understands that. And so we heard a lot about that today as well. So I'm just delighted. I'll turn it back over, I think to either Brian or Daniel, but just wonderful stuff here. Thanks so much, guys.
Sorry, my children have just come home from school, I can hear, and my dog has also heard that my children have come home from school. Shh. I do want to pose one Q&A from the audience, which I think boils down basically to here's the environment we find ourselves in, here's all these wonderful things you all said, is there a match between those two? So there have been some questions about budgetary concerns moving forward. There have been some questions about language in terms of language and some things that could potentially fall under what's now being sort of the big DEI umbrella. So for any of you that wanna pop on and answer, do you see any of these language issues that are coming up or budgetary issues coming up as affecting the work? Does the work change and the way we talk about it stay the same? Is it going to be more difficult to keep the work going in terms of the budgets that we have or potentially could have moving forward? So the question largely from a lot of our audience is, given all those wonderful things that you said and all the work that you all are trying to do you see the current environment having a big impact on the way you do the work or on your ability to continue this work?
Well, I guess, Brian, I guess I can talk about at least Marsing. For Marsing itself, the obviously the concern on federal funds, as far as a lot of the things that we operate on are grants and having restrictions coming through and possibly dissolution of some of those grant opportunities is a concern because sustainability is always going to be an issue. But we're continuing to look for any opportunities for funding that will come up. We apply for almost every grant that we see or is available. As far as language and things, in Idaho, we're especially in Marsing, we're from a very conservative community, and so even the premise of community schools and all the things they do for family engagement, we have to always acknowledge the conservative nature of our community. Every community for every school district on this call has their own unique characteristics, and Marsing is not any different. And so we've got to honor and stay true to our communities and to stay focused on what those expectations are. And for us in Marsing, I don't see that's a big challenge for us because we're already in a very conservative platform.
I
Any
think for us in
thoughts on them? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think for us in Norwalk, at the end of the day, our work is centered around children and doing the work for all children. Language matters, and it's a challenge to be in the predicament that we're in because, as mentioned before, grants and other resources impact the way in which we can effectively provide services and make sure that students are well taken care of. I think at the core, we are here in service of children and doing what's best for children and making sure that the communities that we lead have the resources that they need. And if we keep that at the core of what we do, we can continue to do the critical work. Whether people say to use term A or B or whatever that term may be, at the end of the day, we are always grounded on serving all children. And if we're going to do that, we are going to always do the work of doing what's best for our families, regardless of where they come from and what needs they bring to the table. We have a responsibility, we have a moral responsibility to make sure that what they need continues to stay top of mind.
If I could jump in. So on the topic of language, I think, I mean, the word that's hardest is the word equity, because the fact that that's been weaponized. But, I've shared it at the last board meeting for the community here. I've shared it over and over again with my leadership. Equity is really, it's to one end, it's about student achievement. I don't think anyone argues with the fact that we need all of our students to be successful, and you can't do that without essentially targeting the resources to the students who need it most. And that's just the way we have to do the work. So, I may use the E word less, but the achievement word more. And so, around language, that's really where I focus. And then, many of the strategies we described, I sort of made a point of highlighting strategies that weren't particularly cost intensive. I mean, there is definitely room for, reduced resources to do some harm to our work in this area. But I don't think it would take us out entirely because, we've designed just a lot of practices that are just central to how we treat people and how we act. We don't necessarily invest a lot of extra resources in making that happen. So, we have tried to come up with fairly practical things that we could do without spending a lot, knowing that that's a challenge. But at the same time, I mean, resources are always an issue. I mean, it would be great to see more commitment to this because we just know how important it is for student achievement, and that in the end is what we're seeking.
And I'll just jump in. I did answer the question because, this year's theme was unleashing the brilliance in our district. And so we talk about, as my colleague Alexandria talked about, was if we keep that student focus at the center, we've been asking the same question, even though it is about equity, it's about, do you see me? Do you hear me? Do you value me? Do you respect me? And ensuring that every single all of those things, and we hold ourselves to that promise. And then we're saying, because we need all of that to do the same thing as Dr. Boston talked about, so that we are preparing them for this future ready world, so that we're giving them this world-class education. And so when we tie those values and when we tie the things in the strategic plans that our parents have asked us for, we go back to what is it that we need to do? And oftentimes they don't require huge budgetary lifts to do some of the things we talked about today. It really takes that collaboration with our external partners, and those things make a difference.
Well, I have twin third graders, and I'm going to challenge them to unleash their brilliance because I think that might be what's got me frustrated with them lately. We need to unleash that brilliance I know's in there. We just got to get it unleashed, Superintendent Zachary Ross. I hope everyone will join me in offering my sincere appreciation and gratitude for four superintendents coming on here today to share their wisdom with us, to share their ideas. They're all doing such important and, as Helen said at the beginning, sometimes brave work in this new world we find ourselves in. And so we thank them for their public service and for their work on behalf of all families and children in their communities. And I'm going to turn it back over to Daniel.
Thank you so much, Brian. And again, just want to echo those sentiments. So thank you again, Brian, for being a wonderful moderator for today's conversation. And to our incredible superintendent panel, thank you for taking the time out of your day for being here. It's truly comforting to know that there are leaders such as yourself that's leading initiatives that are really strengthening those bonds between families and schools, especially during today's time. So thank you all for engaging in such a wonderful conversation and highlighting the excellent work you're doing on a daily basis. I want to encourage everyone that's on today to stay on the webinar and connect with your colleagues and discuss your own practices in partnering with district administrators to strengthen your family engagement efforts. So after I finish closing out the panel portion of today's webinar, we're going to stop the recording and we're going to allow all remaining attendees to utilize your cameras and microphones for a little bit of a talk back discussion with our superintendent panel and with some of your peers. So I would also like to remind everyone once again, the session was recorded and we will be sending out the recording and the saved chat to everyone in a follow-up email. There will be an exit survey following the webinar, so please take a minute to fill this out so we can continue to improve our future webinar sessions. Our final Transforming Family School Partnerships with PTA's National Standards webinar for this season will be on Wednesday, April 16th from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Eastern. The focus of this session will be on navigating changes in policy and funding and family engagement. We will be engaging in a timely conversation on the changing landscape for family engagement policy and funding, and also explore how to effectively advocate for policies that support family engagement, gain insights into available funding opportunities, and learn best practices for securing resources to strengthen partnerships with families. Very timely considering some of the audience Q&A today. Everyone that registered for today's webinar has also been registered for the final webinar in the series. We encourage you to share out the registration link with your colleagues and contacts, which I will put in the chat now one more time. So as I mentioned before, stay on so you can continue the conversation with other attendees and our featured speakers. I'll give everybody a moment kind of just to resettle. But to those that need to drop off, thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you at our final webinar on the 16th of April. And I'll stop the recording.